today's video, I want to talk about why avoiding your reactive dog's triggers is never going to help with the reactivity. So this video is for you if you see your dog's trigger coming on a walk and you immediately cross the road, or you turn and head in the opposite direction. Maybe you're walking at really unsociable hours to avoid other people or dogs, or you're even taking your dog to private hire fields so you can finally have some time outside with them where you're not constantly scanning for triggers. If you're new here, hi, I'm Becca. I'm a dog trainer who's been specializing in nervous dogs for the past 6 years. And the most common thing I help owners do is take their dog from stressed, anxious, vigilant, and explosively reactive on walks to calm, confident, and comfortable so that those owners and those dogs can finally enjoy relaxing, safe walks together. So in this video, I want to cover why you are honestly avoiding triggers and what it tells me about your training and your relationship with your dog and their reactivity, and why avoiding triggers won't solve reactivity. And I don't care if a professional dog trainer has told you to do it, and what you need to do instead to actually improve or resolve your dog's reactivity. So why do you avoid triggers? Honestly, you avoid triggers because you're just trying to avoid the stress of those reactions. And so what this tells me is that you basically know that if your dog sees their trigger, reactivity is inevitable. So that tells me that you don't yet have the skills or tools in your toolbox to guide your dog through that situation, help them make better choices, and help avoid that reactivity. The reactivity feels inevitable because you don't have a coping mechanism or a way of working through it just yet. The second reason is that you're not allowing the behavior to be rehearsed, and maybe this is advice you have gotten from a dog trainer or another professional, and to be honest, this is a very valid reason. Anytime your dog is practicing the reactivity and rehearsing that behavior, it does become a more ingrained habit for them, and more ingrained habits are always harder to break and form new habits from than if it was something less practiced. So I actually do agree with this reason that we shouldn't be allowing dogs to rehearse and practice reactivity, and that is a very valid reason to avoid triggers if you don't have any other plan. And that brings us to the last reason, which is you just don't know what else to do. So you don't know what to do in those situations, and you don't know how to be successful with your dog in those situations. And so it tells me that we need to work on your skill set and working on your confidence to make sure you know what to do in that situation and you can help your dog through that situation. And basically, when we're working through reactivity, we turn seeing triggers into something you want to avoid into something you're actively seeking, because every encounter with the trigger becomes an opportunity for training and for practicing a new habit of behavior, and that helps you overcome your dog's reactivity long term. But if you're avoiding triggers, it tells me you're not there yet, and we need to get you there. So I need to cover the two main reasons why avoiding your trigger permanently will never work. So there is something to be said for avoiding triggers temporarily while you don't yet have a plan of action ready to go, because you don't know what to do. You can't impact your dog's behavior, and they are rehearsing that behavior. So that's a very valid reason to avoid triggers. But if we want to permanently resolve your dog's reactivity so they are no longer reacting to triggers, avoiding triggers long term is not going to help. And I have to really address this because most of the clients that come to work with me have worked with one or even several trainers in the past, and many of them have been told to permanently avoid triggers. Just walk your dog in the countryside, just hire private fields. This might be for life. And that is absolutely not okay advice, and here's why. Number one, it's just not realistic. No matter how hard you try, there's just no realistic, practical way you're gonna go through the rest of your dog's life avoiding their triggers completely. And you shouldn't have to either. You shouldn't have to live this really restricted, really rigid life with your dog because you're always having to avoid their triggers. It's not the life you probably pictured for your dog, and it's certainly not stress-free, and it's not easy to do. So it's just not realistic. It will not work long-term to think you can always avoid their triggers. And the second and more important reason is that as long as you're avoiding your dog seeing their triggers, you are never changing how they feel about those triggers. So say, for example, you have a dog trainer, and this has happened with a client of mine in the past. Say, okay, do not walk your dog for 3 months. So you don't walk your dog for 3 months. They do not see their trigger for 3 months, right? Say that, for example, your dog is fearful of other dogs. Their trigger is other dogs and they're acting out of fear. They are absolutely terrified of other dogs. They believe that they could cause them harm. They're really scared of them and they're being reactive in a defensive manner to ask for space. Okay, we now take that dog and we don't go on any walks at all for 3 months, no exposure to other dogs whatsoever. Suddenly you go on a walk after 3 months. Do you think that that dog's opinion on whether other dogs are or are not scary has changed? The answer is no, because your dog has had zero interactions with other dogs, zero opportunity to have their mind changed about what that other dog means to them, zero exposure, zero experiences to show them otherwise, that they don't need to be afraid of that dog. And so it doesn't matter how long your dog goes without seeing their triggers. Not seeing them will never give you an opportunity to change how they feel about the trigger. To change how they feel about it, they have to have exposure and experience with that trigger and learn that, oh, actually, I didn't need to feel the way I felt. And I want to be really clear here that no amount of sniffy walks, puzzle feeders, scent work games, etc. will change your dog's response to a trigger. Again, this is something I see a lot of dog owners being told that is complete nonsense advice. Things like sniffy walks and scent work are all great things to do with your dog. They lower stress and they help your dog develop some good skills, but they're never going to change your dog's response to the trigger, because again, we cannot change how your dog feels about a trigger unless they are having experience with that trigger itself. So there's no amount of anything else you can do that is going to impact your dog's reactivity. So what do you actually need to do if you want to permanently change your dog's reactivity? We want to fundamentally change how your dog acts when they see triggers. Number one that we've been hinting at is that you need to change how your dog feels about triggers. That is where their reactivity is coming from, right? It's coming from how they feel when they see that trigger. So this is the first thing we need to work on. And so we need to understand why they're reacting the way that they're reacting in order to change that underlying feeling. We have to know what the underlying feeling is. So dogs can be reactive out of nervousness or out of frustration. So if your dog is reacting out of nervousness, it is really important that you determine which type or types of nervousness apply to your dog, because the 3 different types of nervousness require 3 distinct and different solutions. So if you want to know how to diagnose the 3 types of nervous behavior and figure out which is relevant for your dog, and so therefore you know what solutions are right for your dog, there's a link on screen now to see that video. I'm also going to put the link in the description below so that you can go watch that and see exactly what type of nervous behavior your dog has and what type of solution they then need you to implement to change how they feel about their trigger. If your dog is frustrated, that basically means that your dog is social. They'd like to say hi to other people or other dogs. Maybe they are excited by traffic going by and want to chase it. It's not out of fear, it's out of some form of excitement. And this frustration also comes from expectation. They're having an expectation of getting to see that person and say hello, getting to greet that dog and play, getting to chase that car and it'll be fun. So we need to change their expectation so that instead of seeing another dog, for example, and thinking, oh, a dog, great, I get to go say hi to dogs, I get to play with dogs, they need to have experiences where that is absolutely not happening. And we need to have many experiences like that to shift their expectation away from I get to greet every dog to, oh, every dog is like background. They don't matter. It's nothing to do with me. And we change their expectation when seeing the trigger. So that is how we need to approach it with the frustrated dog, is changing their expectation. So if you've been allowing your dog to greet loads of other dogs or greet lots of people and that has become their expectation, we now need to flip that and change the expectation so that they don't have that frustration. For both nervous and frustrated dogs, practicing controlled exposure is essential. So, like we've been saying, avoiding triggers altogether, never going to change how your dog feels, right? But when we're thinking about, okay, we need to change how they feel, the practiced controlled exposure is really important because we need to make sure that, for example, that frustrated dog who thinks, I get to play with every dog I see, we need to make sure that they're having experiences where the other dog isn't coming up to them and trying to play, or that just feeds into that expectation. So we need to be walking that dog, for example, in places where dogs are definitely on lead so that we know that nobody's coming up and feeding into the expectation of getting to say hi and play with other dogs. Or if your dog is acting out of fear, for example, we need to make sure that we have enough distance to start with, that they don't feel overwhelmed and pressured by that exposure. So the exposure needs to be controlled and it needs to be thoughtful, but it does need to be exposure, and just avoiding the trigger is not going to be the way forward. All right, the second thing we need to do after we change our dog's feelings and underlying emotions related to their trigger, the next thing we need to do is build a new habit. So your dog's reactivity up until this point is their habit. And I know that because if you're avoiding triggers, it's because you know the reactivity happens more often than not. So it is their habit, right? And so changing behavior is much harder when it's the only habit the dog knows. So a lot of people make the mistake with reactivity of trying to tell their dog, no, 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 stop, stop, stop. But if we are saying to the dog, no, don't do this, but they don't have an alternative habit of behavior to fall into, they're left with not knowing what on earth to do in that situation. They're going to cling even harder to that one known habit that they have. So we need to make sure that we have a new habit we can build to replace this habit of reactivity. So to do that, we're going to teach the dog a reliable behavior. And first step, again, this is another mistake I see a lot of owners making, is that they try teaching the dog the alternative behavior or what you'd like them to do instead in that moment around a trigger when your dog is on the verge of reactivity. Your dog is not learning in that moment whatsoever. We need to teach this new habit as a really strong and reliable behavior outside of that difficult situation first. You're going to start at home, maybe in your kitchen, in your back garden. You're going to teach this behavior that you want your dog to do to replace the reactive habit, okay? And you know what that new behavior is going to look like. There's no right answer for everyone. It's going to depend on you, and it's going to depend on your dog. Some people are going to find much better success at teaching the dog, for example, to walk to heel and keep moving past triggers and having your dog walking in a heel position. Other people are going to find it much easier to teach the dog to do a sit stay or a down stay and have you and your dog be stationary as your triggers go by. Or maybe you have your dog come into a middle position between your legs. That can especially work well for dogs that are feeling really insecure. It can help them feel a bit safer, gives you more spatial control of the situation and of their bubble. So what the new habit is going to look like, there's many different options, and it's going to depend on you and your dog, what you find easiest, what your dog finds easiest in those moments. But again, it needs to be built really, really strong outside of your reactive behavior moments so that you can then reliably ask for it and your dog knows what's expected, even in those more stressful situations. And we can replace the reactivity habit with this new wanted behavior habit instead. So when we put it all together, when we change how your dog feels about their trigger and show them the behavior you want them to do in those situations, make that the new habit, that is when you truly resolve reactivity. So both of those things, changing how they feel and practicing the behavior around triggers, requires exposure to triggers. So this is where we take people from avoiding triggers on their walks to actually seeking triggers on their walks, because every time you encounter a trigger, it becomes an opportunity to change how your dog feels about it and to practice your new habits of behavior. And eventually your dog has much better feelings towards that trigger, and they have this new established behavior pattern that they understand very clearly. And eventually you find yourself not even having to manage or talk your dog through these situations, they know what to do. They'll default into that new strong habit and they don't feel the need to be reactive because we've changed how they feel about the trigger. So that right there, those two pieces together, is the essential equation for resolving reactivity, and it requires that exposure to triggers. So if you are needing help with your reactive dog, that, like I said, that is the main thing I help owners achieve through my online program. My online program is a little bit different maybe to some others that you might have seen before. So I have a course with over 5 hours of video lessons and tutorials for you to watch. Everything you need to know about how to build the foundations with your dog, how to teach them new habits of behavior, how to pick the right habit of behavior for you and your dog, how to change their feelings towards their triggers, and putting all of that together step by step for you. I have an online community that you have access to that you can ask questions at any time, 24/7. I have live Q&A calls, so you can always jump on calls and get answers from me about questions you have. And I give personalized feedback on homework for every single student in the course. So it is not just an online course where you sign up, watch some videos, you're good to go on your own. I am there with you every single step of the way, giving you feedback, giving you your next steps, giving you information, answering questions, and you're never alone through that process. And I'm really proud of the fact that of the students who make it through my course, 100% of them report being happy with their results and that they would recommend the program. So I think that is something that really speaks to the quality of the program, the knowledge and support that is on offer in the program. So if you would like to enjoy relaxed, easy walks with your reactive dog, then make sure you check it out. The link is in the description below. And if you have any questions, let me know and I will answer them, and I will see you in the next one.